What is up, everybody? Just waiting till 2:10 to get started on the lesson. Um, so we'll just wait a minute, and then we'll get this going. I'm gonna put in my headphones so that you guys can hear me better. All right. So, just to start, how is everyone doing today? Oh, just waiting for the minute to happen at 2:10. We will have this. We will be starting the video. All right. So it is now 2:10. We're going to start the video. First of all, I want to say thank you for those of you who had tuned in to my new YouTube channel I created. I actually gained one subscriber. Thank you, gamer, for joining joining my page in YouTube. Again, all you have to search is button mash programming. Make sure you put the ing at the end of that. I'm the only one with that name. All right, so let's get started. So first off, like always, we're going to begin by talking about our assignment that I had assigned to you guys. Where is it? There it is. Okay. So the assignment I assigned to you guys was basically yesterday, last night, was to randomly generate another integer. So it was to randomly generate another integer for. Sorry, just give me 1 second. I want to make sure the sound quality's on this right now. Okay, yes it is. Okay, so I just want to randomly generate numbers. I asked you to randomly generate a third number, a third integer, uh, where it's multiplying, and it creates a switch statement for if the user was correct. So here we go. So as we discussed before, you created the integer called number one, number two, and number three. You make it equal to number generator dot next. Again, mine is 1 to 12, or actually 1 to 11, because it doesn't count the last number. And also, again, I apologize. You want to start by going random dot number generator is equal to new random. So it is calling the number generator when you write it here. The dot next resembles that the number is a positive number and it will remain a positive number. Now, you can also do this for integer number 3, but for the sake of just going through the homework portion very quickly, I'm going to leave that information out for now. It's not necessarily, it's basically just making sure that you understand what's expected to you and get you used to writing these things down. The next thing we did was we wrote to the console, what is blank what is number 1 times number 2, and we could say times number 3, following the same format to writing to the console, and so it's displayed to the user. Again, the next thing we do is we create an integer called answer. We convert that integer called answer, so whatever answer this generates, to a number, and give it a number value, and have the console input that information into the console. The next thing we do is we put an if statement with the conditions for if using a correct answer. So basically, if the answer is correct, here is the if statement. Now, we want to place the function brackets right after that. So it's basically saying if the integer called answer is equal to the number 1 times number 2, And we can also, because I asked you to write a third integer, you would write times num3, or whatever you used as integer representing number 3. We're going to open a function bracket, which is the squiggly bracket again, and we're going to create an integer. So we're going to use the integer response index, and it's going to generate numbers through 1 through 4. The 1 through 4 do not mean the same thing that they mean up here, but it's saying we're going to generate responses 1 to 3, which is case 1, case 2, and case 3, or default, but regardless, it means the same thing. So essentially what I have done here is basically whenever the user gets the answer correct, we're going to randomly generate one of these 3 responses. It could be correct, good job, you are right, or good job. Now make sure you're dividing each one of these by a break, so it knows that where each begins and where the case begins and where the case ends, and you end that with a semicolon. You want to close your if. You want to close your if bracket. You want to close your if function bracket at the end of this break code, at the very last one, and you want to also close your case function bracket, your switch function bracket at the right at the end of the break. So you'll notice that both of these for this particular if statement end at the end of break, at the very last break. Now we're going to use the else statement again. I showed you guys this. If the answer was wrong, we randomly generated 3 responses. So because we already went over this, I'm just going to go over this really quickly. So I called this integer a different response. So meaning that if the answer is incorrect, we obviously don't want to use the same variable that we used up here, because it means they resemble 2 different things. We don't want to call the variable that we used up here. So in order to avoid that, or avoid confusion in the system, we use a completely different integer. So I use diff response, meaning different response. So it is equal to the number generator, So it's going to generate a number, an even number, a positive number between 1 through 3. And then we put our switch. And again, I have listed 3 cases. Now the order doesn't necessarily matter. As you can see, I did 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. As I was looking into this a little bit further, it actually doesn't matter. So if I said that matters before, it really doesn't. And then we close our functional brackets. Now, as I requested, that I want you guys to set up a go to start so that it keeps circulating it keeps randomizing numbers after you've answered one correctly or incorrectly, and it'll generate a new equation. So again, at the bottom I wrote go to start with followed by a semicolon at the end of the last function, and then I wrote start followed by a colon of where everything started. So basically, this is where I want it to come back to every time it comes back down to the end. So that's it for the homework, really. That was for switch statements lesson. That was the lesson 4 that we had. Basically, if you have any questions about that, please feel free to ask. I am going to be assigning more kind of work you can do to fool around with that a little bit, but we'll get a little bit more into that, because for today's lesson, we're going to talk about for statements. Now, for statements are used for, give me 1 second here. So, rather than writing integer number 1, integer number 2, integer number 3, integer number 4, integer all the way all the way to 10. This is to save yourself some work. So this is called a for loop. So what a for loop is essentially to do is basically it is meant to increment the integer each time through the cycle of numbers that you have set, through the criteria of the numbers you have set. I'm going to explain what that means. I know it sounds a little confusing. We'll go through that we'll go through that shortly. I want to change that number. So let's just say we want to print numbers 1 through 20 on the console. As I mentioned before, we want to work smarter, not harder. So we want to create less work for ourselves, but trying to create the same function. First, we start with the word for. Next, in the condition parentheses, we create an integer called I, or it could be an integer called whatever. I just call it integer I because it represents integer. And make I equal to 1 and end with a semicolon. Then we make I less than or equal to 20, or less to 20, and that with a semicolon. We want I also to increment by 1 each time it runs through the loop. So essentially this is how we do that. So we started by an int called I. So we said for, and in our conditions bracket we said for an integer called I, it is equal to 1. So 1 being our starting point of where we're starting for integer I. Then we follow that by a semicolon ending this particular portion. The second portion of that is we want I to be less than or equal to 20. So we don't want it to be 21. We want it to be I, or we want it to I to equal less than or equal to 20. So essentially we're creating 20 integers without actually writing integer 1 through 20. I++, now this is a little confusing, and the first time I saw this I had a hard time understanding what this was. Just think of it this way, okay? I plus 1. Now it's going to highlight, so it's going to highlight that and tell me that's incorrect, but this is what it means. All it means is that we're going to increment the integer called I each time it runs through the loop. So I++ is every time we run through the loop once, go to the next number, which is integer 2. Go to the next number, which is integer 3. Go to the next number, integer 4, and so on and so on and so on. Now, that's the conditions of how you set that up, okay? And within conditional brackets, we want to place the message that's going to be displayed, or what the user is going to say, okay? So what we want it to do is, and I'm going to show you something crazy here, because I'm going to play around with a little bit, and we're going to see if this actually works. A nice thing about coding is we get to experiment. Okay. Okay. So, originally, all you saw here was we want to write to the console numbers 1 through 20. Okay? So what this is going to do is we were supposed to just, you can close the bracket at just I and just leave it at I. Okay? And it'll go integer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way to 20. And I'm going to show you what that does, just so you can see a difference. So we're going to push, I apologize, and before you run the code, you want to make sure you are closing the function bracket before you're running it. And also, one other thing is that you'll notice I wrote console.writeLine here. what it's going to do on each line, it's going to count through numbers through 1 through 20. Now here's where console.write and console.writeLine, you can actually kind of see the differences in this. So, Control F5. Alright, so you're going to see, now you can see numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way to 20. I didn't actually need to create integers, integer 1, integer 2, integer 3, integer 4. I didn't actually need to do that. So what this essentially did was just save me all that work of creating all the integers 1 through 20. Now, there's another way to do this. Now, you said, as I mentioned to you guys before, there's a difference between console.writeLine and console.write, but I'm going to show you one other thing before we do that. So I'm going to say integer I plus hello. Oops, sorry. I know why it's doing that wrong. All right. So, essentially now, I'm not sure what I did there. All right, just give me 1 second. Sorry, I accidentally deleted something. Oh, deleted a lot there. Okay, I plus, and in quotations, and my keyboard just changed on me. Give me 1 second here. So, now that what I've done is I've said I plus hello world. So technically, all this should reprint to the screen is the integer number 1, then plus hello world every time. So Control F5, and there you are. 1, hello world, 2, hello world, 3, and then all the way to 20. And again, to get the spaces, just put more spaces between your quotations and your word. The next thing I wanted to show you, just very quickly while I have you here, is the difference between console.write and console.writeLine. Now, the difference here, it's going to print all this numbers through 1 through 20 on the same line. So Control F5 again, we run the program, and there you are. It is now on the same line. So essentially, console.writeLine is to write things on separate lines, and console.write will write everything on the same line. Alright, so I have an assignment for you, and this one's a little bit bigger because it's going to help to see where you're at understanding-wise, and if you are actually understanding what you are doing. And I'm going to start calling this new segment Test Your Might. I don't know if any of you know this or used to play the old Mortal Kombat, but that was a thing. Like, there was a thing in between matches where you like arm wrestle or you do something, you try to break a board. But yes, the segment is now called Test Your Might. Now, the first assignment I'm going to give to you guys, just test yourself. I'm going to have you generate a loop that counts from numbers 1 to 100 with only even numbers. So it'll be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, all the way to 100, okay? Now, something to keep in mind while you're doing this is the percent sign means divide. So it means divide when you're writing that out. So something like I divided by, the I percent 2 equals 0. This means that I is divided by 2 should equal 0. So meaning that it is only even numbers. Just that's something to keep in mind before you do this assignment. So that way it's just saying I want only even numbers between 1 and 100, or 2 to 100, I guess. Um, the second assignment, uh, the second assignment I'm going to give you guys, using if statements. And now this second assignment is actually going to go into a little bit more when we actually work on our next assignment. Now, just to see if you have an understanding of if statements, because I'm going to show you a little bit more comparison between if statements and for loops, why they become useful. What I'm going to I'll be introducing you to is also while loops. So basically, what I want you guys to do is I want you to generate a program that calculates somebody's grades. So like if you were to an average of somebody's grades. So if you were to put in like 70, 80, something, whatever, I wanted to calculate the average of somebody's grades using the if, else if, or else statements. Okay? Keep in mind, so if you were I also want you to change that grade into a letter value. So 95 to, for an example, 95 to 100 is equal to an A plus, or 0 to 49 is 0% to 49% is equal to an F for each grade letter. So basically, I want you to do this for each grade letter. You don't have to do A plus, C plus, but this was just an example. Just simplify it for yourself. Go 90 to 100 is an A, and so on and so on and so on. But just try that out. Keep in mind, do not write the percent on your code, because do not write percent without putting quotation marks around it, because again, percent means divide. So if when you are showing this equation later, you are you don't want it to divide something when you just meant input 70%. All right, so give that a go. If you're unable to do that, no worries. As I said, I will be doing a whole nother segment called Test Your Might in button mash programming. I'll have a video just dedicated to going over these two things, because it is a little more complicated, and I want to make sure you guys understand before we continue to move on, because this is where things begin to get a little more confusing. This is very much so like math, that once you get lost in programming, it is easy to stay lost unless you work towards finding out where you got lost. So if you have any questions, just feel free to ask me. Again, thank you for your support. Thank you for watching my videos. Search Button Mash Programming in YouTube, and you'll find my channel. It's the only channel with called Button Mash Programming. Also, if on your spare time, when you're trying to relax from studying or whatever, check out Flash 5, all one word. This guy is absolutely hilarious. Lots of video content, lots of random 5 top picks or weird picks of something, but really entertaining. Give it a shot. All right, well, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Check out, if you're worried about you missed most of this video, don't worry, I'll be posting it on my Twitch account. Just search Varga Ultra, that's VARGA ULTRA, all one word, or search Button Mash Programming in YouTube, and the video will be there as well. Alright, so thank you guys. Hoping to do another video today, showing you the answers, and possibly a third video. Let's see if I'm up for it. But thank you for tuning in today. Have a good day.